Everybody. Thank you for joining today. I'm very excited to be presenting today a little bit about staying trauma informed and focusing specifically on being trauma informed with parent engagement and supporting parents as they learn about trauma and how to engage with their children and those that they care for who are under the age of 17 is my main focus. I'm going to have a slideshow popping up, and I also will share a document with Mr. Furness, so he will be able to share with those who are not currently available, and he can probably share that with those who are looking to join via recording, and it will just sort of follow along the agenda and also has a couple different hyperlinks and a couple different photos and pictures of topics that we're going to address just to make it a little more clear and engaging for you all.
So what we are going to do is all right, so we are going to, are you ready for the PowerPoint?
I am ready.
All right, so what we're going to do, hold on one second.
All right.
Let me get out of this for a little bit and get to my presenter view. Hold on. All right. All right. So first, I want to introduce myself. I am Keon Furness, the Family and Community Engagement Specialist. And what we are bringing you today is through the Parent University, where we hope to give you support and some tools that help you become trauma informed and stay trauma informed as it relates to supporting your child and your student in Granville County Public Schools. I am very excited about having Ms. Ragland here to give her expertise and background and share this important information with our families. So without further ado, I'm going to let her begin again.
Perfect. And it looks like there's one screen that I can still see is in front of the PowerPoint screen. Are you able to minimize that by chance? Perfect.
Okay.
So again, I am Emily Ragland. I am the owner and founder of Community. I am largely focused on staying trauma informed, and much of my work is around specifically working with students and families of students who have kids with any developmental differences, sociological level struggles, trauma history, abuse, neglect in their history. And my constant desire and goal is to always just maintain an opportunity for professionals and parents to learn about how to be trauma informed so that we are able to understand our youth and try to be supportive of them and their journey towards strengthening through possible traumas. So the first slide is going to be a little bit about me. I'm not going to read all of that, but you're welcome to. It's just a little heads up about sort of my background. I am currently the marketing chair for the Family Life Coaching Association. I received my master's at NC State, go Wolfpack. And I am a master's in youth, family, and community sciences, where I also received my certificate in family life education and coaching. And my focus, as you see here, is continuing to just use my expertise, use my knowledge and my passion for supporting professionals and families. I opened Community the month that I graduated, so it's been a busy few months, but it has been well worth it because I want to maintain an opportunity to educate professionals and parents. Ideally, nationally will be the goal, but for now, I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to be able to share with you guys locally. I'm in Pittsburgh, so not too far from you all, and I am excited to be able to share information. Please ask questions. If it's a recording, my contact information is at the end. Feel free to reach out or reach out to Mr. Furness and he can connect us as well. So today's training agenda is also with the Google Doc. I know our participant, were you able to open up the agenda? Ms. Tucker, no. Do you have the PDF file, Dr. or Mr. Furness, that you are able to share?
Yes. Are you seeing? Are
Yes.
you
Is it
seeing?
possible that you can share that PDF file into the chat?
I can.
Okay.
You would have to give access though.
I can do that. All right.
I'm going to get out of the presentation so that I can put in the chat PDF link. Okay. So we'll come back.
I feel like somehow these processes always take longer when you're trying to do it live than if you weren't. Always the case.
Mhm.
It is loading to ask me if you can have access. Yes. Okay. So hopefully that works. Again, we're going to be going through it as we hit the topics, but there's just a couple little links that are also included in the process as we're going, that are in the handout, that are not in the PowerPoint. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, if you could, Mr. Furness, close that one thing again, and we can get back to the PowerPoint. That'd be perfect. Great. So we're going to do group introduction. We'll wait and see if a couple more people join. Individual activity, I think, will be actually helpful. And then for those who are joining for recording, you're also welcome to please do these activities still, especially the individual one, as it will pertain to a lot of what we are addressing as we go. And also towards the end, I do call back on that information just for a sort of summary of what we've learned. We're going to learn, of course, what is trauma, and we're going to talk about adverse childhood experiences. There are 8 of those. The focus for that is really understanding how those impact trauma. Often those are the top ticket items, if you will, of what it is that we're seeing when we talk about trauma, especially among children who are 0 to 17. Continuing with the agenda.
Okay, you want me to go back to the agenda?
No, it's on the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Just the next slide.
Okay.
What can trauma look like? So again, please always remember, trauma can look very different to every individual. It looks very different to every child. There's a lot that impacts how we engage with trauma, how we respond to trauma, what is traumatic. So always keep your eyes open and always be aware that it is not a cookie cutter situation. Much like anything with children is not a cookie cutter situation. So trauma with one child may look very different than a trauma to a different child. Trauma in the same family may look very different. So just always be aware, and we're going to hit a couple items and topics of what looks like trauma and how we can move forward in helping those who may be showing us some impact of trauma. How does trauma impact children now and later as they develop? Again, a lot related to adverse childhood experiences. A huge portion of the study that was done, and we'll touch on this again in specifics, really learned that those who do have history of adverse childhood experiences, especially as they mount more than one of them, so the more you have, often there can be outcomes in their future of that child that are more challenging and more unique. So it's something that we want to keep our eyes on and be aware of as we learn the importance of trauma and the importance of engaging with those who have trauma experience and trauma history. How do we help them grow through and past the trauma responses? Of course, the main goal is not just to learn about trauma, but what do we do about it when we see it? How do we support our children? If we're professionals, how do we support our students? How do we support our neighbors, our loved ones, ourselves even? A lot of this will focus on the 0 to 17, but a lot of it also is still pertinent as we grow up and get older. So just keep that in mind as well. And then of course, there will be opportunities for questions. Please, you're welcome to hold on to them for those who are attending. Again, if you're watching the recording, please feel free to email me, reach out, call me, text me. My number and contact information will be at the end of the presentation. Perfect. So first thing, introductions. So if you would, Miss Tucker, and I'm going to introduce myself as well, but what interests you in this training and what do you plan to use this information to do, and how can this help you in what you do?
Yeah, so I actually work with juvenile justice.
Okay.
And so I think it would just be, important for me to learn about different trauma and things that kids go through, because we like to try to get to the root of why they ended up doing what they did. And
Absolutely.
so, while we're not the ones necessarily assessing them, we definitely, need to look for certain things and stuff. So I think that this would just be helpful for me to that.
Absolutely. What age group do you typically work with, or is it a full range?
It's a full range. It's pretty much anyone from 6 to 17.
Wow. Okay. So in that process, what I really am appreciative of you joining is, like you've said, oftentimes, although we may not be, doctors and therapists, so we're not necessarily diagnosing, but it is always really crucial to be aware of students who might have a trauma history, especially like you said, in the juvenile justice system, because a lot of individuals who are probably there are there as a result of perhaps handling and coping with trauma in ways that may or may not have been very safe or healthy. And that often is an outcome as well that we're going to hit on of, sort of how we develop past trauma in our childhood as we do get older. Do you find that the children and young adults that you run into, Ms. Tucker, do they often disclose trauma, or is that something that you guys find that you're able to see more in behavior?
A little bit of both. A lot of times at first, they might not want to say anything, but the more we get to, just making them feel comfortable being around us and being able to talk openly, they might say a little bit more, but definitely behavior is definitely a strong indicator.
That makes sense. All right. Next slide, Mr. Furness, if you would.
I'm here. I'm letting someone in the room.
Okay.
So I have to go to that screen. That's why I turned the camera.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah. So let me do that, and then I'll be right with you.
Okay.
On that. Let someone in.
You should be able to go down just to the Zoom screen that has the camera, and it'll let you go back to the home screen, and then you can just let them in.
Yeah, I have done that, and I'm trying to get back to all right, and we are back. All right, so we are
perfect. So I'm going to mention this because I know there's just Miss Tucker here at the moment, but what I think is really important as you're watching the recording as well, and think about a time, perhaps as an older adult, as a young adult, as a child, where you, oh, I'm going to let this one person join, and then I'm going to ask the same question of them. Hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well.
Hi. So I'm glad you're joining us. I was just about to pop in on an individual little activity. So if you would, I'm going to ask you and Miss Tucker, nothing that you have to physically do, just something to think about as we move forward. My name's Miss Ragland, by the way, and I am the owner of Community. So I'm doing this training. Please feel free to ask questions as you go. You're welcome to unmute and ask or write it in the chat. For this individual activity, I'm going to ask you all to think of a time where you went through a challenge, perhaps now as an adult. You might know that it was a trauma. Perhaps as a child, you didn't necessarily know what that would have looked like. And who did you feel comfortable turning to? Who did you turn to in that moment? And how did you feel successful moving forward with that person? What did they do that was helpful? What did they perhaps say? What did they offer to you that helped you get through those moments? I myself have had a history of some traumas as well, and I know the importance of sort of learning about that process, not only for our own growth, but to be able to offer that same condolences, the same empathy, the same understanding for individuals who might come to us. Now, as you think of that, if you could, either out loud or in the chat, describe to me in 3 to 6 words, if you could, what did they do that helped you get through that moment?
So not necessarily as it relates to the situation, just what the person did to help you get through in that moment.
Right.
Okay. So for me, that person was able just to be there for me, support me, kind of reassure me that everything was going to be okay, checking me out. So for me, that was most important.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Ms. Tucker, do you have any example that you thought of in that activity? And if so, any thoughts of just a quick idea of what it was that happened that perhaps an adult or perhaps another child did to help you get through those moments? You may have stepped out.
I think she put something in the chat.
Okay, so we'll check back with that, but I do appreciate you sharing that exact support, reassurance, and the idea, I imagine, for me, what I think is really important too is like that feeling of safety, that feeling that someone's in your corner, that someone is empathetic, that your voice is heard. So I want you just to keep in mind those couple sentences, those thoughts as we go through this, and then I'm going to call back on that same thought as we get towards the end of the training. So for the next slide, if you would, that Mr. Furness. And you're welcome to mute if you want until we do have moments where, unless you want to ask a question or if you have anything else that you would want to say, please join in. This is not me just talking at you, but with you. So what is trauma? It's an experience, a set of experiences, an individual impact that impacts us emotionally, mentally. It impacts our ability to see positively, and it does so in a negative way that impacts our thoughts, our feelings, our behavior. What I think is really important to note is you may hear different titles and different items of what trauma is. The thing that I think is most important is that we are able to get to the point where we understand that it is different for everybody. The thing that is most important to be aware of is that it impacts you in a way that could challenge you currently and challenge you as you move forward. So if you could, Mr. Furness, the next slide as well, it's not necessarily a single event. It could be ongoing events, and it could be social or societal experiences. So if either of you, Ms. Tucker, or may I have your last name to the other lady that joined us? I can't see the end of it.
Lily and Renee.
Okay, thank you. If you have any ideas of particularly a social or societal experience that may be happening now or was happening recently that could be traumatic to students or children 0 to 17, what can you think of when you think about possible ongoing social experiences that could be impacting children right now?
I would definitely say what's going on right now in the pandemic. Having a complete change in their normal routine as far as waking up, getting on the bus, having a breakfast, and being ready for school. Now it's completely different.
Yep.
The kids are doing remote learning. Some of them have gone back to school, but for the most part, it's still not normal to them.
Right.
And so a lot of the students are experiencing anxiety,
Yeah.
some depression, feeling isolated, not being able to interact with their peers, after school activities, whether they're in a club or, playing sports. So it is
Yeah.
very traumatic for a lot of students. And so personally, I coordinate school-based mental health services. So a lot of the referrals that I've been receiving has been for anxiety, depression, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great points. And I think being aware of what can impact children and youth, not just in their lives individually, but what's going on around everyone that could impact them. A lot of things recently around race relations has led a lot of students of color to be very anxious, to be very worried about their future, worried about the safety of their loved ones, their safety. The election was very triggering for a lot of people. The process of waiting and the anxiety to know where we're headed as a country. And again, it could also be a single event. A car crash can be traumatic. A house fire can be traumatic. It could be ongoing events. It could be perhaps family, like touching within the family inappropriately, molestation, sexual assault, sexual abuse, neglect from a parent or professional. So we want to remember that a lot of times when we think trauma, societally and culturally, we think of an event, a traumatic event. And we think, okay, it happens and then it's done. And, that you move on, it's finished, you should be fine. But we have to remember that even that one single event, especially in a child that's still developing psychologically, emotionally, behaviorally, socially, their identity is still developing. It can very significantly impact how we see ourselves, how we feel we connect with peers, how we trust adults, how we trust professionals. Ms. Tucker, I know you were mentioning the work that you do. If we think of an individual that perhaps not aggressive and, fairly enough, they had to be perhaps restrained, or there were handcuffs involved, or they were, taken from their home. A lot of those situations can be traumatic, and they may not know that that is what trauma is. They may just think that sucks, that makes me sad, and then months, weeks, years later, it could start to impact them in ways that they can't connect. So as adults and as professionals and as parents, we want to make sure that we help them make that connection, that we could see, why is he starting to move away from people all of a sudden when they try to hug? Or, with the pandemic, it's creating a lot of this social disconnect, like you said, of I don't know how to engage with people because for the last 7 months, I haven't seen a peer face to face. So when we do go back to hopefully a face-to-face world where we can hug and we can high five and we can get back to sports, our children and students may need to be reminded how to do that appropriately, how to do that safely. And so I think it's important that we just keep that in mind as we move forward, that trauma looks very different. It could be a one-go experience. It could be a family setting and situation. It could be neglect, or it could be something that we watch in the media, on the news, in the world around us. So we want to always be aware that it looks different to everybody. If you could, Mr. Furness, the next slide. So like I said, it looks different to everyone. Not all children are impacted the same experiences in the same ways. So think about it too. It could be the same children. It could even be twins in the house, same parents. They go to the same school. They ride the same bus. They're in the same classroom. And something could impact them differently. It could be that there was, they were preparing and doing a, preparing for if there was a school shooting and they, it was just a preparation, the alarm went off, the teacher told them to get under their desks, whatever it is they need to do. And it may not impact one of them, whereas the other one may start to get very scared every time they hear that alarm sound, or every time they go to school, now they're scared that there might be a shooting. So we want to be aware that it is not going to be a cookie cutter situation. We could grow up, my sister and I grew up in the same house, the same opportunities. We are 180 from each other. So it is not necessarily that A plus B will always equal C. So we have to remember the variables involved. When you add X, when you add Y, what is the outcome going to look like? And remember too, children won't know for themselves what may be triggering them. So all of a sudden they don't want to go to school, and we're upset that they don't want to go to school. We think that they're just being, difficult, and they're just trying to make things hard, and they just don't want to work. But maybe there was an experience that happened even weeks before they start to finally say, I don't want to go there anymore. So it's our job to dive a little bit deeper. And again, it could be the same with people from the same school district, the same settings, the same school itself, and it could look very different. So it's really important that we're able to say, instead of what's wrong with this kid, what happened to this child? We don't want to say, you did. We want to say, who did what to you? What happened with you, to you, about you, around you, that is leading to this behavior, that is leading to the distrust, that's leading to maybe self-injury. And again, we're going to hit on a couple topics and a couple things that often can be results of trauma. So the next slide, if we could. So like I said, within trauma, we often want to talk about ACEs, which if you've ever heard, and perhaps you have not, is adverse childhood experiences. Now, these are 8 main topics, often that are connected to trauma. And this is not to say that these are the only things that impact trauma, but when professionals are talking about trauma, when teachers often talk about it, school counselors may talk about it, therapists, one of the things that often happens is they want to calculate a child's ACEs. And statistically, the more ACEs a child has, especially the earlier in their lives, the more challenging it may be to get them back on track from a trauma. So Ms. Tucker, when we talk about a lot of the work that you do, the last thing on here, or one of them, is crime or imprisonment of parent and caregiver or caregiver. Oftentimes it could be also a child's, seeing a sibling imprisoned, a friend being imprisoned, themselves being imprisoned. That is traumatic in of itself, even if it were to go to the best possible outcomes and everyone was safe, it's still being separated from your safety, separated from your home, not knowing the outcome, not knowing your circumstances. So we want to always be aware that, sometimes in our work, just for them to get to us, they have to have at least one trauma. And that's where it's particularly hard for counselors, for family coaches like what I do, is rarely do people come to us without challenge. They come when things are difficult and we're already facing a challenge with them. So like I said, this is typically 0 to 17. This is the childhood as we talk about numerically. One of those things and the list is the physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence within the home. That could be towards a child or just something a child hears, sees, parental substance abuse, which is huge right now when we talk about COVID. We talk about parents who are stressed out. They are at their last possible level right now. They're trying to work with teachers. They're trying to do their own job. They're trying to keep their kids busy, keep them active, keep them well fed and healthy and sleeping well on routine. And to that, a lot of adults are starting to turn to substances. And a child, therefore, is going to see that, especially because now they're not going to school. So they're going to watch a parent. Perhaps you think you're hiding it. Perhaps a parent thinks that they're, doing it after bed, so a child might not know. But just having a parent who maybe is turning to substances can be a trauma. Perhaps that parent sleeps in the next day and isn't able to help them get on school Zoom on time. Or perhaps that parent wakes up and they're sick. And so that child's watching you be sick and is worried about your health. So that is a huge one, especially right now. Mental illness is another big one that's really, really critical. A lot of people are not getting the supports that they typically did get. People who maybe went to AA, went to NA, they're not necessarily going. They might have Zoom, but even with Zoom, it's not the same as going to the building. And as we all know, I'd happily prefer be doing this face to face. It's just not the same. So we want to remember that. Suicide or death within the family. A child who sees that around them for any reason, especially a child who perhaps was there during any of it, that's going to be traumatic. Crime or imprisonment of a caregiver or parent or loved one, also traumatic. So think about this, if you could, especially in the work that you ladies might be doing. Rarely, if ever, would I say in the work I do, does just one of these exist. It's often a child comes to you and perhaps their parent has mental health struggles and there's some emotional abuse because there's a disconnect from the other parent. Perhaps there's some domestic violence because that parent mental state is up and down. So, ladies, if you could share with me, in your experience, do you find that these are often layered? Do you feel they're isolated events? What would you say you see when you think about adverse childhood experiences and you think about those 8 topics?
Well, in my experience, it's always been layered. Like the child may be experiencing mental illness, but that stems from the child who grew up in a home there was domestic violence, mom was a single parent, just a lot of stuff. So it's actually coupled with a lot of the different ages.
Right. And the statistics show and the data shows that the younger that they are, with the more of these that they fight and that they have experienced, the more layers we talk about when we talk about trauma. So we talk about perhaps distrust or worry. So Ms. Tucker, if you could, what do you see in the work that you do when you see these 8 ACEs that you find perhaps come together in the same time often, or you find that perhaps a kid comes to you guys with one struggle and you guys find layers that there's more involved?
Yes, I apologize. I couldn't quite hear what Miss LeMay was saying, so if I say anything that she said, I apologize.
Okay.
But I was going to say, it always does seem that it's more than one thing. Sometimes there is one isolated incident, but a lot of times, one thing happens and then another. It seems like sometimes it's just like a cycle of victimization.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
And then in other instances too, you may have several things going on inside of the house that need to be addressed.
Yes.
From,
And
the parents swimming down to the children, and then between children, and then between somebody on the outside as well. Like there's so many different things that can happen in life that just affect people differently, and it's going to be depending on the individual child as well.
It's getting a little bit hard to hear you here and there. If you could.
Okay, sorry. And it comes down to the individual child as well. Like you said earlier, how they deal with different things, and if they have those coping mechanisms to
exactly
deal with things or not.
Absolutely, great point. We're going to get to that later as well, but that point is phenomenal. That is resilience, and like you said, it impacts children differently, and often it is a result of how resilient one can be. And it's a shame that that's what it takes, the desire and the ability to just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and clawing your way back up. But resilience is a critical skill set. when it comes to being able to successfully succeed in your life socially, emotionally, with relationships, as an academic. Resiliency is critical. So great point. I appreciate you sharing that. And yes, layers every time. Rarely is it one. And if it is one, perhaps it's a aspect to possibly another one that's coming, or it gives us a heads up to look deeper into a family setting. So always be aware, that there are possibly more layers out there than we're aware. And often that's why it takes so long to get a child the help that they need, because it's like once you hit one thing, you unearth another, and then you find you need another person to help you address that situation. So always, especially as parents and professionals, lean on others. Don't ever feel like if it's not in your wheelhouse, you have to accept it and jump in. If you need to have somebody else sit there and say, I'm experienced in domestic violence, how about we tag team this? How about you refer them to me? Remember that it takes a team to address, especially a childhood trauma. All right, so we're ready for the next slide. So again, this is just a picture. It's also in the handout. But these are those 8 topics, again, that are usually the ongoing ACEs challenge and struggles. Like I said, there are more things that lead to trauma and are trauma. But when we talk about ACEs, these are the 8 that they navigate and that the study that was addresses specifically. So then for the next one, like I said, so this is the study that was done. It was 17,000 different people through the CDC experiencing adverse childhood experiences, and then also learning about what are the risks to those people as they get older. And what it found was children who have higher ACEs, more ACEs earlier in life, and perhaps don't have that resilience in their history or have the support that they need to get out of it, are far more likely to have illnesses as they get older, like heart disease, obesity, mental health challenges, that often then can also lead to earlier deaths and higher mortality rates. And oftentimes the challenge of that is not just the fact that it might physically impact your body. Trauma impacts your physical ability to be physically strong every day. You might be depressed and stay in bed. You might not exercise or eat well. But also, when you have a trauma, you may also be suicidal. You may also be more likely to engage in risky behavior. And so that information often leads to children and young adults having their lives cut off short because the trauma has eaten so deeply at them that their life just doesn't meet that full capacity. So for the next slide, here's a little bit about how ACEs can impact adults. So again, like we said, one of the things that we know through ACEs and through the study of the process of ACEs is that there are outcomes that impact these individual children as they get older. And one of those things that are most challenging is really being able to see these things as a parent, as a professional. And if you start to see a change, sort of diving deeper into it. So ladies, if you're willing to, as you look at these numbers, if you could share with me any of them that you feel perhaps impact the work that you do or that you see that are statistically information that is just impactful to the work that you're doing as you move forward with youth.
Okay, so what was the question?
So if you see, as you see these statistics, are there anything on the statistics that you feel you see in real life often as you work with kids as they get older, or any statistics or numbers that parents say, oh my goodness, I've noticed he or she has started to do da 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 da, that would lead you to possibly noticing or connecting parents with further history around trauma?
I was very good on the video. Being that I've been with at-risk children, a lot of children have mental health challenges. They are truant or chronically absent, however you want to put it.
Yep.
When we, a lot of times when we go out to the homes, more familiar with the parent and get a glimpse of what's actually going on, all of these would apply, not to just one field, but across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is another reason that we talk about how and why it's so important to know ACEs, but to know that trauma, again, is not a conversation that starts now and ends in the same 10 minutes. This is an ongoing situation. This is an ongoing challenge. This is something that even a young adult who may feel successful, like they've gotten through it, may still face a lot of these situations as life tries them. So maybe they get successful, they're back on track in high school, they do well in college, but then reality hits and there's rent and there's relationships and there's, watching the news and perhaps worrying about what's going on with your loved ones and your safety and yourself. And all of a sudden, we see the depression kick in, we see the promiscuity kick in. We don't care about ourselves and our safety, so we are, maybe taking riskier decisions. We maybe we had a scary sexual experience younger that led us to not trust others or to overtrust others. And to that point, then we perhaps are looking for relationships and connections with people of the opposite sex, or anybody to just feel connected. And so we are getting more sexually active earlier, perhaps, maybe not safely. So again, I know it's conversations that are hard to have as parents or professionals, but if we don't start to notice these things, or maybe even dive a little bit into them with the students and children that we work with, we may miss some of those flags that can alert us to something that's more concerning. And often children may not know that these are signs of anything. They just don't want to talk about smoking in front of someone, or, they don't want to talk about how they've been eating more or eating less. So if you see someone who used to weigh a certain amount and it looks like, oh man, they're really losing weight quickly, maybe that's something's going on, that often is a sign of needing control, a sign of, wanting to control something in my life. And the one thing I control is what I eat. So always just be aware that, again, what we see is going to be very different for each child. But if we see something that looks like, that doesn't seem like them, or the parent says all of a sudden, she doesn't want to get out of bed when we usually go to church, or, her friend wanted to Zoom with her and listen to music, and she said she would rather take a nap, and she's been doing that for a few days. Just, remind parents, and as parents and professionals, just be aware of how those things shift. So the next slide. Again, this is just a quick one, and it's on the handout as well, which I've included in the chat, and we will include and send out later as well, hopefully, to those that also perhaps weren't able to open it. But these are a lot of the items that impact the world as a child who experiences trauma. So again, cancer and diabetes, alcohol and drug use, education issues, income challenges. A lot of times students who maybe have trauma don't want to go away to a state they've never been to. They don't want to go try something new around places they've never been. Or perhaps they do desperately want to get away, but they don't plan it particularly well. Or when they do get away, they maybe aren't on top of their grades. And so the school struggle starts to kick in. So these are things that I want to remind everybody that although trauma can be challenging now, the importance and the reason that we have trainings like this and why I commit my work to what I do is because it's not just right now that it's impacting. This could impact a child and a young adult for a very long time and a lifetime. And so as families, as professionals, we have to be ready to have these conversations, and we can't shy away from them as hard as they are. We have to say, I hear what you're doing and we hear what you're dealing with. How can I be of assistance to you? Who can we connect to you? So the next slide, if we would, is again what it can look like. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but ladies, like you have mentioned already, you probably have seen some of these things: anxiety, PTSD, self-medication, self-isolation, suicidal thoughts or attempts, ideations. Statistically, a lot of what the data is sharing as well now is students who are LGBTQ+, students of color. The way that the world has sort of unraveled, particularly in our country currently, is a distrust, a fear, a worry of rights, of safety, of what I will be able to do successfully with my loved ones and with myself as I move forward. And so a lot of times young adults are getting more and more concerned. Older adults are getting more and more concerned. So we want to just pay attention. This is kind of what it could look like. Like you've mentioned, grades could drop all of a sudden. Attendance could be impacted. Maybe they used to be able to sit in front of the screen and now they don't show your screen. It's worth diving deeper into and thinking, she's always been fine being on the screen. What's going on back there that she doesn't want to share with us? We're all going to have a day or two where maybe we don't want to be on the screen. But if a student always was, and now there's weeks of not being on the screen and not showing their face, it's worth being concerned. It's worth looking into. So the next one. This is a link that's great. It's Dr. Burke. She's amazing. She has a 16-minute, I'm not going to play it, 16-minute YouTube on ACEs and the impact of ACEs. Definitely worth watching. It's in the handout, but you can also just look it up on YouTube. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, definitely a huge part of the ACEs conversation. Definitely worth watching. Next, perfect. So what do we do? Think of the ladies, think of that thing that we were talking about at the beginning. What was it that changed how we handled a situation that was challenging? Who was it in our corner? What changed me from thinking, there's no way I can get past this, to feeling like, okay, maybe I can do this? A huge part of it is staying engaged as a parent, as a caregiver, knowing what's going on in your child's life. Communicate with their teachers and their counselors. Ask questions, even the scary questions. You know, when a child maybe doesn't want to talk about it, I'm not saying push them, but make a note that she's usually okay talking about her day, but today she doesn't want to get into it and she sort of went straight to her room. Maybe that's worth checking on later. If a student all of a sudden doesn't want to go to a class they've always been into, they don't want to be near a friend that they used to want to spend time with, just be aware that there's a shift, and it's always worth sort of sitting down and thinking through, and maybe speaking with your significant other people you trust, the school counselors, and just continue to educate your children on safe touches, healthy touches. There used to be stranger danger, and statistics showed we're not only supposed to be concerned about strangers now, oftentimes we need to be aware of those closest to us when we talk about inappropriate touch, when we talk about crossing the lines. So developmentally appropriately, of course, just make sure you're having these conversations with your kids, and so that they know that their body is their own bubble, it's their own space, and it's worth protecting. And when they feel it's being treated poorly, to go to whoever it is that they can trust. And always listen, because oftentimes kids are telling you something. It just may not be straightforward, but they're trying to tell you something. It's always worth listening to and asking them to share more. Next slide. So, ladies, when we think about those words, like I said, connections and relationships are what will get us through this. So when we talk about trauma, when we talk about ACEs, statistics show one of the things that matter the most is connecting people to each other, having people in your corner, having people that you trust. And what's really important right now in the world in which we are in is, like you had mentioned, Miss Lillian, is we are not going to camps like we used to. We're not going to football practice. We may not be going to Boys and Girls Club. So the people that we see are much less now. So that means the people we do see have a little bit more, sadly, a little bit more on our shoulders, because if we see this child and we know the only other person seeing them might be church virtually, maybe a parent, and maybe a neighbor, they're not having 12 or 15 face-to-face contacts like they used to. So they don't have the same connections and the same supports and the same people who could say, something seems a little off, or to have that child to go to and say, hey, at home, something's not right. I don't feel safe. So a huge concern statistically, when we talk about psychologically, we talk about safety, is when kids do go back to school. And this was a huge conversation when we talked about whether or not it was time to bring kids back to school, is professionals are finally going to start to put their faces back with these kids. And what are we going to see? Are we going to see healthy kids, or are we going to see kids who maybe are malnourished, who maybe haven't been going to the doctor's appointments that they were supposed to go to, who maybe have been left to their own devices because parents have had to go work? And so maybe they have just been eating whatever, peanut butter and jelly every single day, or they haven't woken up in time, or they haven't been active. They haven't had the mental health support that they need. So as professionals, we need to remember, as the world starts to go back to face, there's a lot of responsibility that we notice a lot of these things, and that we engage those that are a part of our team to help connect with the professionals that need to be connected. So there are 5 protective factors. Again, these are the things that are going to be most important when we talk about successfully fighting a child through trauma, and particularly ACEs. Parental resilience, so just being strong families. On here is a YouTube video. We're not going to click on it, but it's also on the handout. I did a quick, 20-minute interview on family resilience. So it goes to the YouTube video of that interview. Just being connected with your family, having fun, not making everything always serious, still letting your child see you as a part of your support system, providing an array of social connections. Again, with COVID, that's tough. So it may be worth, Zooming grandma and grandpa every once in a while, just so they can see your face and check in on you, and you have people in your corner. Maybe you Zoom an old coach that you used to like to hang out with that you don't see as much. We want our kids to have people who see them and can check on them and can be there so that they have someone to trust. Provide parents with concrete support in times of need. So again, I'm always here for parents. I'm a family educator. I'm a family coach. That's always my goal. But also as professionals, we have to be ready to connect people to those that need them and that they need. Facilitating knowledge of parents and child development, and supporting healthy and social and emotional engagement. Again, tough to do socially right now because we are always on Zoom. So it's always worth working with your kids as a student. I've told a kindergarten teacher a couple days ago, have parents even wait in line with their student before they go to the bathroom, so the student can learn how to wait in line, how to raise your hand, have story time, even if you just have 2 kids. These are skills that kids are not having right now that they're going to miss out on. And we want them to have that social ability to come back to the world and be actively engaged. Next slide. Support, support, support. Like I said, always think of who's in your corner. Always make sure a child knows you're in their corner, your parents in their corner, grandma and grandpa are there, their neighbor. Let them know that there are people who see them, who hear them. I think somebody had mentioned when we were talking, about our 3 to 6 words, support and reassurance. And we can offer that easily. It costs no money. It takes 10 minutes, but let them know, I see you, I understand your worry, and let them share with you, because oftentimes they're coming to you because you are trustworthy and they need someone in their corner. And it's always worth being in their corner when you can.
One second, I'll get back to the PowerPoint.
I'm not able to see the PowerPoint.
Okay, maybe. Oh, okay, let me go back.
Awesome. Healthy social and emotional awareness. Like I said, give a child the words to use. Kids often might say that they're angry when they're scared. They might say that they're mad at this person when that person might have done something that hurt their feelings. They might say that they're, tired when they're really not tired. Maybe they have just been emotionally drained because something happened at school. So always remember that kids may not use the right verbiage. You need to give them the words that they need to use to be able to communicate. Model emotional awareness. Tell them how you feel. I had a hard day. I'm really feeling tired. I feel like today, somebody at work told me that I had to not done my job as well as they wanted me to, and I felt disappointed. Use your words so that they know how to use their words. Remember, it's never too late to address trauma. Never feel like, oh my gosh, it happened when he was 4. I'm just finding out now and he's 11. There's nothing we can really do. It's never too late. The best thing to do to start is ask questions. And the second best thing is to connect them with professionals if you're not sure. The worst case scenario, you have them speak to a school counselor, you have them speak to a therapist, and maybe that person meets once or twice and you find out, okay, the child has been resilient through this, they're still doing well, and you're not anything that you have to worry about too much. You're fine. But what we want to be assured of is that we never get to the point where we think, oh my gosh, it happened so long ago. There's nothing I can do. And as a parent, especially, do not blame yourself. Don't say, if I had been there that night instead of at work. Always remember that hearing them is the first and most important step. As professionals, if you've worked with them for years or months and you've said, oh my gosh, I never noticed, I never knew that. Okay, you know now, what can we do to help move forward? So never put guilt on yourself. Give them words, give them supports, validate their feelings. One of the things, again, that we heard when we were talking about what helped us get through a moment that was tough for us was reassurance. Someone said, I can understand that you'd be bothered by that. I can see how this is hurting you. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. How can I be there to help you? We need to think what's going on with this child, not why is he being bad? Why does he keep yelling? Why is he kicking people? Yes, those are concerning and they're safety concerns, but they're happening because something's going on. I'm a behaviorist. I have always been into behavior. My passion is always child behavior. Nothing ever happens without a reason. No one just does something without a reason, especially kids. So there's a reason that they're not going to school. There's a reason that their grades are dropping. There's a reason that all of a sudden they're, coming home late or they're not waking up early enough to go to school. What is going on? So again, always make sure it's never too late. Better late than sorry, never. Just jump in and just ask questions and get them to people who can be in their corner. And I think that is the last of the slides. My contact information, like I said, is at the bottom here. Please, my website is that first one, my email, and then my phone number. You're welcome to call or text. I have a Google Voice. Give me a call, ask any questions that you might have. I'm always happy to do a training to professionals, or if you just have a situation that you want to talk through as a professional or as a parent, I am here for that. I just want to help, especially with where we are in the country right now, everybody get to a happy, bright side where we're all feeling like we're back on track and successful. So however I can help, let me know. If anybody that's currently here has any questions or want to share anything, I would love for that as well.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same here. I appreciate you taking your time out to do this presentation. It was very informative. And so I just thank you for that.
Of course, happy to. And I think if Mr. Furness is able to, if he has maybe emails he can send out, if people weren't able to open up the agenda, maybe he can send that out because it does have other links and some other images, and then also the link to that YouTube video that is well worth watching of Dr. Harris.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my plan to share this with many of the families in our district. Each school will have a copy of this recording to share, and
Great.
we will have it posted to our Granville County Public Schools social media.
Great.
And we will also have it added to our YouTube page as well. So all of your information will be included. All of the links to the other handouts, we will embed those into the media as well.
Perfect.
I just want to thank you so much. I know we were figuring this thing out.
Absolutely.
I was trying to approve folks, so I do hope that wasn't represented too sloppily on the video, but you have done us an amazing service by providing this information to our parents and community members. And we look forward to working with you for part 2 coming up.
Absolutely.
And we're going to try to reach out to our ESL families
Yes.
to give them some of this information again here in a couple of weeks. So
Perfect.
you'll be with us most of November, and then we're going to try to have you back in the spring
Yes.
for some more sessions. So
Absolutely. Sounds great.
yeah, so we thank you for having us. And with the
Of
last 5 minutes we have here, and you're welcome to hang on the Zoom, we're going to talk about school-based mental health.
Awesome.
And
Okay.
Miss Lillian LeMay, our school-based mental health guru here in the district, will provide just some comments on what the district is doing
Perfect.
in this regard.
I'm going to hop out because I do have an 11 or a 1:30, so I'm going to go prep for that. But I do appreciate the opportunity. And everybody, if you have questions, please reach out.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. All right, Lily.
All right, so again, my name is Lily Ann LeMay. I am a school social worker for Granville County Public Schools District, and I also coordinate school-based mental health services. So what we do to address and offer additional support to students and families who are experiencing mental health challenges is school-based mental health services. And so what that looks like is that we go out and we seek partnerships with mental health agencies that's in our area to provide services to our students and our families. And so prior to COVID happening, we actually allowed the therapists to come into our schools and provide services for students. And so now that we are in the middle of the pandemic, we still continue those services, but that is through telehealth. And so telehealth is just a platform that therapists use. And actually, we wouldn't necessarily call this meeting or training we're having right now is telehealth, but it's pretty much the same setup where a child has access to a laptop or either a mobile device, and that therapist is able to set up a meeting and work with that student and that parent to develop some coping strategies to put into their toolbox. So whenever an issue arises or they're needing some additional support, they can rely on that. And so we also provide support services in our schools as well. So not only is the therapist working with that child and the family, but our counselors and our teachers are also working with that child. So that pretty much sums it up for school-based mental health services. If you have any additional questions, I can be reached on at my Granville County Public Schools email, and that is LeMay, Lemay, l@gcs.k12.nc.us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. LeMay. We appreciate all of your work and service to Granville County Public Schools. And if the information you have is, or if you have any questions, parents out there have any questions, please use her information to reach back out. The information for our presenter today, Ms. Ragland, will also be available in this video. And we just thank you for everyone taking their time to be a part of today's video. And if you have any other request of me, my information is Furnace, FURNACEK @gcs.k12.nc.us. And that's where I can be reached if you have any further questions or want to know more about Parent University. Parent University has been here to provide training and support for all of our families and to provide opportunities for building compatibility and really making sure our partnership is really strong with school, community, and families. So thank you all for attending and then viewing this video. And we look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thank you.